Now that you have learned some prerequisite skills with the warm-ups and the amount of change formula, we are now going to talk about simple interest. The way that we teach this is to give you some experience first. What that means is you're going to take the information that we learned in the warm-up and the previous lesson to answer the first 7 questions on this page. It doesn't have to be very formal math. It's just how you understand it. After you've worked through this first page, we'll come back and formalize it with some notes. So this would be a good place to pause the video and answer these 7 questions. All right, I have filled this in with some answers that I have seen students give in my face-to-face classes. So don't worry if yours doesn't match exactly. This is just for you to have some experience with these problems and kind of draw on some of your knowledge. So now what we're going to do is we're going to formalize these answers with some math formulas and math procedures. And typically what I like to do is change my pen color. So just make it something different than you already have. And that way this part of your notes will stand out. For problem 1, it's asking for the amount of interest. And we did some calculations here. You may have something similar on your paper. And all I did was to find the interest I multiplied the initial amount that I borrowed. That's also called the principal. And I multiplied that by the rate. This is very similar to what we did with the amount of change formula in the last section. Only now we have different variables. For problem 2, this is asking how much we owe her in total. Well, that will be our future value. How much are we paying back? We're starting with that initial value, which was the principal of $100, and then we're adding the amount of interest. Problem 3 says, how much will you pay in interest if the time is double? And to get this 20, I just doubled what I got from problem 1. If it's $10 for 1 year, it's 20 for 2. To find this with a formula, we want to do interest, and then it's still principal, which we did in problem 1, and we would still multiply it by the rate, but now, since it's longer than a year, we're going to multiply it by the time. So that was 100 times the rate times the amount of years. 4 just asks you what happens when the amount of years increase. Problem 5 talks about borrowing the same amount of money, but what happens if we increase the rate? The interest is still going to be that principal times the rate. The rate here was 50%. We're going to write that as a decimal. And this 100 is the principal. That's the amount we're starting with. Then to find the amount that we're going to pay back, we have our principal plus we added our interest. That's going to get us our future value. What you'll notice is the interest formula is P times R times T. Instead of writing I'm going to rewrite it as PRT. That will also get me my future value. The last question asks, well, what if we pay it back in half the time? So I just took the amount of interest from 50 and divided by 2, since that's all I kind of knew. Well, we can still use that formula. I equals PRT. The principal was 100. The rate was 50%. And now the time is half of a year, which is 6/12. And I wrote it that way on purpose instead of writing 0.5. And I'll show you why that is in the next step. So now you've had some experience with the material. We added in some formulas. So now let's put some notes right here that puts all of that together. One of the things we talked about was interest, and that is going to equal P times R times T. So the interest is going to be the principal times the rate times the time. Principal is going to be the dollar amount of money deposited or borrowed. Later on, we will call it present value. The rate is going to be the percentage, but we need it in decimal form. And the time is going to be in years. So on the problem before, when it said 6 months, I want to divide it by how many of that measure is in a year. So there's 12 months in a year. Or if the time was 5 months, I would still divide it by 12 months. This formula, I equals PRT, this finds the simple interest. This is the fee paid or earned to borrow or invest money. All right, let's go back to problem 1 and 3. They both use the same formula. And in fact, on problem 1, even though I don't have the T listed, it's still there. It's just the time is 1. All right, and again, we did it in problem 3. And again in problem 5. And again in problem 7. Now, what about problem 6? We have our FV. All right, FV is going to be future value. The future value is going to be the principal plus the interest. So if we borrow $100 from someone, we have to pay them back that $100 plus the additional interest. So FV is going to be principal plus interest. Or we can write it as principal plus, now the formula for interest is PRT. So instead of writing I'm going to put in PRT. Or there's one more way you could write this, and that is going to be P times the quantity 1 plus R times T. And the way I pick which formula I'm going to use is just based on the problem. Now is your opportunity to practice some problems. I'm going to give you the answers to all the problems so that when you do the problem, you know if you got it right or wrong. For the online students, you do need to show your work for all 4 of these problems to upload your notes. So the answer for problem 1, interest will be $550. Future value is going to be $3,050. Problem 2, the answer for interest is going to be $2.38. Problem 3, the interest is going to be $11. And problem 4, the rate will be 5%.